Thanks for coming back to the channel. Sorry, I paused there for a second. Bree Lambert-Sanders here.
Joe Sanders here.
And hope you guys are enjoying our launch in a discussion about coaches that we think have influenced the sport of running. Joe and I talked last time about Per Se Serde, so today we're going to talk about Emil Zatopek and why we think Emil Zatopek was such an amazing runner and also a contributor to the sport. So Joe, tell us about Emil Zatopek.
Oh, you're putting it all on me.
Well, I'll add some.
That's fine.
I'll add some history.
He's a Czechoslovakian runner who was an interesting guy. So he, with his training, he sat back and watched a lot of runners doing their training, which was a lot of long, slow running, which I do believe in, but he didn't. He believed in order to run long and fast that he needed to do many repeats fast over a long period of time. He had a workout that he did where he did 50 400-meter repeats in the morning, and he would come back and do another 50, which is completely mind-blowing in the evening. And now they wasn't timed, so he just ran them off feel, which was kind of cool because we lose sight of that in today's training. We don't do body checks and think about where we're at with our running. We always go by time and I got to hit
Strides
my time.
Per minute, that sort
no,
of thing.
it's more just about hitting the interval time. So, anyways, so that's what he would do. He also did other interesting training methodologies. He would, in the wintertime, run in his army boots because it gave him more stability. And he would go running through the snow, and he basically would be doing knee bounding through the snow. He did other crazy training. He did a lot of breath holding techniques where, and I think you can still find a couple of his videos where he's doing 110 fast strides, holding his breath, and then he would recover. And he would do these. So his philosophy was, if you want to run long and fast, you can't train long and slow. So he would do, like I said, mini repeats like all day long.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is interesting because with Per Se Serde we talked all about natural stuff, right? Training barefoot, eating natural, being in a sweet environment that helps fuel you. Where Emil Zatopek was more like a Marine. He was more mentally tough.
And intensity. That's really what comes to mind when I think about him is that he was an intense runner, right?
So he believed that by it being difficult and hard, he was not only just training his body, he was also training his mind to be able to deal with the discomfort of running. So that's kind of how he trained in a nutshell. There's a lot of ins and outs and you can find information about him and read about him. But he was a phenomenal runner. He won. He almost won the 5,000 meter gold medal. He lost, I think it was to a Belgian runner.
That was in 1948, right?
It was
London.
The first Olympics. He closed in actually on the last lap and almost caught him at the end. But then he won the 10,000 meter gold medal before that. And in the next Olympics, he did what no man has done before, after, and probably ever again. He won the 5, 10, and the marathon all in one Olympics. And
that was in 52. Sorry, I'm just giving you guys those stats so you guys can, in fact, review those amazing accomplishments that he did, because I think that's important.
He was a strong runner. Like physically, he was strong. Like you look at his build, and you can see the musculature in his legs and even his upper body, and So I think a lot of that strength came from doing the army boot running, but he also did other stuff like. When he wanted to break, he did something was I think his most incredible thing he ever did was when he ran 20K. I think there was less than like 10 guys in the world who'd ran 10K under 30 minutes, and he ran 20K, and both 10Ks of that 20K were both under 30 minutes. He was like 29 something.
Wow.
And then 29:32. I don't remember the seconds. But so one thing he would do is that when he would fall off pace, he would have somebody lift up a card, so he would know if he was behind or ahead during the race. Now we have people yelling out splits and everything.
Right, and watches that we can do that with. But that's what makes this, I think, this early period of running and training, which is why I wanted to share this or do this series, I guess, is because it's so cool to me to think about these runners like Emil who just, to your point, ran out of themselves essentially,
that was
right?
one of his quotes. Actually, you know what? It's funny that you said that because he is an amazing athlete. He is usually when you have athletes that are at a certain caliber, you always have jealousy. You always have other runners that are jealous in how they got there or what they had to do. Emil Zatopek was such a kind-hearted guy that he would always cheer on and help other runners in any way he could, which is rare. I mean, that's at my age now, 52. It's like I'm always wanting to help people because there's nothing to hide at 52. I'm not going to set any world record. Nothing's going to happen.
Hey, but you can still run fast.
Yeah,
so.
But
he was known for his good heart, his good
yeah,
spirit.
he was always happy, always he always had that personification of being happy and cheerful, and he had so much passion for the sport. And for all of those reasons, just not his accomplishments, but his self-training beliefs and his experimentation with breath holding and intervals and toughness, all of those things, I got to classify him as one of the greatest runners ever. And as kind of a self-coached guy, I would say he's one of the most interesting self-coached people there has been.
I would agree with that. Yeah. And so let me just ask this of you. I remember when we started our discussion about who we wanted to talk about, and you initially, I don't think we even had Emil on the list, but then you were like, oh no, we got to talk about Emil Zatopek. So for you personally, in terms of how you've trained over the years, have you kind of taken bits of his training and implemented into your own? And what does that look like?
Well, a lot of people don't know who I am because I started as a runner really young, and then I ran a really decent mile, and then I hurt my Achilles tendon, and I disappeared for running and went into bike racing and rode with a lot of elite bike riders. And then from that point, I had saw a magazine, Kenny Souza, who was a world champion, and I thought, hey, running and cycling. And so I went into that sport and went to 4 world championships.
Yeah.
And got the opportunity to race in 4 world championships and see other guys and how they train and stuff. But I always took those pieces of the pie. I mean, whether it was Percy Serde or Lydiard or Emil Zatopek or Jerry Lindgren or Bob Timmons or Ernst Van Aken or any of these, Bill Bowerman, Bill Dillinger. There's so many great coaches that have their little belief systems. The bottom line, it's all educated guessing. It's kind of like being a doctor. You learn about all this stuff.
So
with all these coaches, you have to take little pieces here and there,
right.
and then understand how they're going to work with you. And I think in the end, that's kind of what Alberto Salazar did with the Nike Project team, is he took all these little pieces, including speed, because it used to be taboo, right? You don't want to do speed work with your aerobic distance work.
Right. With you specifically, right? Yeah. When you were in your really competitive phase of training, what did you find worked for you personally?
So
and where did that come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on the person's physical attributes. I tended to hang on to muscle, and so a lot of aerobic endurance worked. I kept my strength, but it leaned out my muscle, so my strength to weight ratio was better.
Right.
For an ectomorphic person or a naturally skinny guy, a lot of aerobic work may not work for him. Yeah, it may be a combination of things. But for me, a lot of aerobic work and strength work, aerobic work and all this stuff is great, but if you lose strength, then you're just a lightweight, weak guy. Yeah. And it's just the same as being a heavy, strong guy. You have to combine. In any of these endurance sports, even bicycle racing now, is you look at these guys, they're like elite distance runners. They're so thin. They're almost emaciated. They look like war crime victims. But they're maximizing their lightness and maximizing their strength.
Okay, now let's bring it back to Emil real quick. So with Emil's training philosophy, knowing what we know, right, about
Yeah.
in terms of intensity, and that he had these like really unique training principles, right,
Yeah.
or even methods. What do you think can be gained from that in terms of like, okay, so we mentioned he did breath holders,
Yeah.
he did several 400-meter repeats, he wore army boots and trudged through the snow on a fairly consistent basis because he could, right? Because of where he was living.
I don't recommend army boots.
Yeah. But like what, you know,
so what's
what's the
you can take from
takeaway?
that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the takeaway is that there is no set principle. I think that what you would take from Emil is that he really thought off the cusp, and he combined endurance work with leg speed work,
Yeah.
and it was a great idea. I mean, he sat there and go, I don't want to learn to run slow. I already know how to run slow. So he wanted to train fast, but he believed by doing, like I said earlier, by doing lots and lots of repetition, that he would get his endurance work in
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
And there's some truth to that, and
Yeah.
yeah. So
Cool.
it's he was an interesting guy, and I
Awesome.
think everybody that reads about him is inspired by him.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely say that I've found, just reading up on him myself, just found him to be truly, like you said, one of the greats. So that's our discussion about Emil Zatopek. We'll be covering Bob Timmons next. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation, and please subscribe to the channel and follow me at Catch the Breeze.
Or you can follow me at 34bytes
Yeah, so we'll see you soon.
at gmail.com.
That's
my
his email. All right, you guys.
All right,
Ciao.
adios. Ciao.